Not all battles are fought on the front lines. Some happen in quiet courtrooms, and in moments when no one expects justice to show up. What started as a routine stop became a lesson in discipline, honor, and the power of truth. This couple didn't raise their voices. They stood their ground, and what happened next changed everything. If you value stories about integrity and accountability, stay with us. Subscribe to hear more real moments where justice still wins. The road to injustice began with a family drive down the coast. Marcus Reed had his left hand resting on the wheel, his right lightly holding Vanessa's fingers. Their daughter, Emma, sat quietly in the back seat, clutching a purple unicorn backpack and humming to a song only she could hear. They were headed to visit Marcus's parents for the long weekend. A rare moment of pause between his work at the Department of Defense and Vanessa's current operational leave from naval special warfare. The late afternoon sun bathed the highway in a warm glow, and for a while it felt like nothing could touch them. That feeling vanished the moment red and blue lights lit up behind them. Officer Bradley Cole's cruiser pulled them over just past a blinking yellow light. Marcus parked on the shoulder, rolled down the window, and greeted the officer with calm courtesy. "Afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" Cole didn't answer immediately. He adjusted his sunglasses, peered into the car, noting Emma in the back, then looked back at Marcus and Vanessa like he was reading a report only he could see. "You ran that light back there," he said. "Sir, I don't believe we did," Marcus replied evenly. "It was yellow when we entered the intersection." Cole smirked, dismissive. "Step out of the vehicle." Vanessa shifted slightly, alert but composed. "May I ask why?" she said. "Because I said so," Cole snapped. "License and registration, now." Marcus handed them over without a word. Cole walked back to his car, but not before giving Vanessa a longer look than necessary. Emma's voice broke the silence. "Did we do something wrong?" Marcus glanced at her through the rearview mirror and gave a small, reassuring smile. "No, sweetheart. Just stay calm." When Cole returned, he ordered both adults out of the vehicle. "This stops escalating," he declared. "Suspicious behavior." Passenger appeared agitated. "That's our daughter in the back seat," Marcus said, keeping his tone controlled. "We're simply trying to understand why we're being detained." But Cole wasn't listening. He reached for his cuffs. "Turn around, both of you. Hands behind your back." Emma screamed when she saw her mother cuffed first. Vanessa didn't resist. Her voice was low, directed at Emma. "It's okay, baby. Don't cry. Everything's gonna be all right." Marcus followed silently, refusing to give Cole the satisfaction of an argument. As Cole radioed for backup, a passing car slowed. A woman in military fatigues watched from behind the wheel, her brow furrowing. Moments later, she stepped out and identified herself as Lieutenant Harris from the local National Guard. "What's happening here?" she asked sharply. Cole waved her off, but Harris noticed Emma crying alone in the car. "She needs to come with me. I'll take her to the station. Wait for a guardian." Reluctantly, Cole nodded. Emma clung to her unicorn bag as she was gently guided into Harris's car. As she was driven away, she kept her eyes on her parents through the back window until they disappeared from view. The damage had been done. Cole thought he'd just subdued two more difficult subjects. He had no idea he'd just ignited a chain of events that would dismantle his entire career. The holding cell was dimly lit and cold, the kind of cold that settled into the bones no matter how long you sat. The steel bench pressed hard against Marcus's back as he leaned against the wall, eyes fixed on the corner where the concrete met the floor. Vanessa sat beside him, her posture upright, unmoved by the chill or the silence. The echo of distant doors slamming shut broke the stillness now and then, but neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Their silence wasn't fear, it was calculation. Cole had booked them under suspicion of obstructing an officer and refusing lawful commands, his voice smug as he wrote up the report. He thought it was airtight. He thought he was in control, but he didn't know who he was dealing with. Marcus turned his head slightly, just enough to meet Vanessa's eyes. She nodded once. He whispered, "It's time." Vanessa shifted her weight, drawing a deep breath before standing and walking to the payphone mounted on the far wall. The guard didn't pay much attention. Just another detainee calling a lawyer, he assumed. Vanessa picked up the receiver and dialed a long string of numbers. No hesitation, no uncertainty. A secure military relay answered after the second ring. She spoke calmly, clearly. "Crimson Echo protocol active. 2 operatives compromised. Elkwood Precinct. Request confirmation." A pause, then a voice responded. "Confirmed. Crimson Echo. Stand by." The line clicked dead. She returned to the bench, sitting without a word. Marcus didn't ask for details. He didn't need them. He'd written the damn protocol. Crimson Echo wasn't just a code. It was a net. The moment she made that call, a switch flipped somewhere deep inside the naval surveillance network. From that second on, every square foot of the Elkwood Precinct, every hallway, every office, every interrogation room, was under surveillance. The command didn't need a warrant. They didn't need permission. The only thing they needed was that phrase spoken by the right person in the right situation. And Vanessa was that person. The system didn't trust civilians to protect its own. It had learned that the hard way. Outside the cell, Officer Cole had no idea he'd just turned his entire department into a stage, and he was now the lead actor in someone else's operation. Back inside, Marcus exhaled slowly. "Now we wait." Vanessa rested her hands on her lap, her voice barely a whisper. "No mistakes. We follow protocol. Let them underestimate us." Marcus gave the faintest smile. They already have. The gears had begun to turn, silent and slow, like the kind that crushed everything in their path, and Cole had just stepped right between them. The interrogation room smelled faintly of bleach and metal, sterile, sharp, and unforgiving. Officer Cole stepped into the first one, the door clicking shut behind him with a sound that seemed to enjoy its finality. Marcus sat at the metal table, wrists unbound now but posture steady, hands folded like he was waiting for a conference to begin. Cole walked in with the air of a man about to deliver a lecture, pulling out the chair opposite Marcus and flipping open a file like it was theater. "Look, Mr. Reed," he started, voice dipped in mock concern. "I know your type. Quiet, measured, probably think you're smarter than the room. Maybe you are. But here's the deal. We can make this easier for everyone." Marcus didn't blink. Cole continued. "Your wife, she's clearly been through a lot. Military background, right? That kind of training, that kind of intensity, it does things to people, makes them volatile. You can help her, you know. Just tell me you were trying to calm her down. Tell me she overreacted and you stepped in. The jury will understand. It'll walk. She might even get a deal." Marcus leaned forward just slightly. "Are we done?" he asked, his tone even, professional. "Or is there a legal question in there you'd like me to answer?" Cole's jaw clenched. "Suit yourself," he muttered, collecting his folder and storming out. A few minutes later, he entered the second room, trying a different angle. Vanessa sat alone, arms relaxed at her sides, eyes steady. The overhead light cast sharp shadows across her face, but her expression was unreadable. Cole leaned against the table, arms crossed, trying to appear casual. "Your husband," he said, voice soft like they were sharing secrets. "He's a protector, isn't he? Took all the heat himself. I can respect that, but you don't have to go down with him. You say the word, and we make sure you come out of this clean. Maybe you were scared, maybe he got aggressive. Say that, and we talk to the DA. You're a victim here too." Vanessa said nothing, not a twitch, not a flinch, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from fear, but from training, from experience. Cole's charm cracked, irritation leaking through his words. "You really want to take the fall for this?" he snapped. Still, silence. The kind of silence that turned interrogation rooms into mirrors. After a beat too long, he slammed his hands on the table and left. Outside, the hallway felt colder. His plan was unraveling, thread by thread. He had expected defiance, rage, pleading, anything but this calm refusal to play by his script. Back in the holding cell, Vanessa was returned first. Marcus looked up, searching her face for signs. She gave the smallest nod. He tried the divide and conquer play, she whispered. Textbook. Marcus exhaled. Then we stay the course. Analyze, adapt, overcome. The old motto hung between them, not just words but a code. One they'd lived by long before this room, long before this fight. By the next morning, the air in the courthouse waiting area felt thick with quiet tension. Marcus and Vanessa sat side by side in beige county-issued attire, hands resting calmly on their knees. The cuffs were gone now, but the unease in the room wasn't. When the door opened, a young woman with dark circles under her eyes and a messenger bag slung across her chest stepped in. Rachel Alvarez, she said, introducing herself. Public defender, I've been assigned to your case. She looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. Vanessa nodded politely. Marcus extended a hand. Appreciate you coming. Rachel sat across from them and dropped a thick folder on the table. I've read Officer Cole's report, she said, her tone tight. It's thorough. He claims you were verbally abusive, that Mrs. Reed made a sudden movement toward him, and that you, she glanced at Marcus, physically obstructed his access to the vehicle. He's listed you both as emotionally unstable, referencing unspecified PTSD markers in your service history. It's his sworn testimony against yours. And frankly, his version is very convincing on paper. He's a decorated officer. You're outsiders. This is going to be incredibly difficult. Marcus exchanged a look with Vanessa, then turned back to Rachel. We understand, he said calmly. We're not expecting you to pull off a miracle. Just do your best. Follow the law. That's all we ask. Rachel stared at him for a beat too long, searching for signs of desperation or denial. Instead, what she found unsettled her more. Not hope, not panic, just certainty. She closed the folder slowly. Okay, she said, I'll prep for the hearing. As she walked away, Vanessa leaned in. She doesn't get it. Marcus kept his eyes forward. She will. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact, delivered with the quiet resolve of someone who'd spent a career teaching people like Rachel exactly how the system works. Until it doesn't. The courtroom was quiet, almost too quiet, as Officer Cole took the stand. He wore his uniform like armor, pressed and spotless, every pin and stripe polished to a mirror shine. He glanced toward the jury with practiced restraint, the kind that feigned humility but whispered control. The prosecutor, a man clearly familiar with Cole, gave him a gentle nod before beginning. Officer Cole, can you walk us through what happened the afternoon of the 26th? Cole leaned into the mic. Yes, sir. I initiated a routine traffic stop after observing the defendant's vehicle run a red light. I approached calmly, asked for license and registration. The male driver complied, but the female passenger became visibly agitated. Her behavior escalated rapidly. I feared for my safety. His voice trembled slightly at the end, just enough to register. What made you fear for your safety? The prosecutor asked. Cole paused, lowered his eyes. Her stare. Cold, vacant. It reminded me of combat veterans I've dealt with before, people who've seen things that never leave them. It's in the eyes. She didn't blink, didn't speak. Just stared. That's when I knew something was off. The jury nodded slightly, drawn in. And the male defendant? Instead of helping to de-escalate, he stepped between us. His posture was defensive. At that point, I had no choice but to detain both for the safety of all involved. The prosecutor showed the jury a photo, a faint scratch on Cole's forearm. This is the injury you sustained? Yes, minor, but it proves physical contact was made, enough to validate use of force. Rachel stood for cross-examination, holding her notes like a lifeline. Officer Cole, just to clarify, you say the female passenger didn't speak? Not a word. And her expression alone caused you to feel physically threatened? It's not just expression. It's a combination of body language, eye contact, behavioral cues. We're trained to spot these things. Were either of the defendants armed? Not that I could see, but they were unpredictable. Did you find any weapons in their vehicle? No, ma'am. So the only physical evidence is the scratch on your arm? Correct. How was that inflicted? Cole hesitated. In the course of detaining the male subject, he resisted. Rachel flipped a page. But according to your initial arrest report, Mr. Reed complied with verbal commands. Cole shifted in his seat. He complied eventually, but his body language. That'll be all, officer. Rachel sat down. Cole exhaled slowly, composing himself as the jury watched with a mix of sympathy and uncertainty. Across the room, Marcus and Vanessa sat still, faces unreadable. To the jury, their stillness looked like cold detachment. But it wasn't. It was the discipline of people who'd learned long ago how to survive chaos by refusing to give it fuel. In the eyes of those unfamiliar with that kind of control, it looked like guilt. And that, more than anything Cole had said, was beginning to tilt the scales. The judge adjusted her glasses, eyes scanning the courtroom as she prepared to give final instructions to the jury. Rachel sat quietly at the defense table, fingers laced tightly in her lap, her earlier confidence draining by the second. She had done everything she could, asked every question, poked every hole she could find. But Cole had danced through it all, lying with the ease of someone who had done it before and gotten away with it. On the other side of the room, Cole looked smug, already imagining the headlines. Marcus and Vanessa remained silent and still, their composure mistaken for defeat. The judge cleared her throat and addressed the room. Before we proceed to closing arguments, does the defense have anything further to add? Rachel rose, reluctant. Your Honor, The words froze on her lips as the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom burst open with a thunderous boom. Every head turned. A 4-star Navy Admiral, his dress uniform crisp and gleaming, strode into the room with purposeful steps. On either side of him walked 2 armed naval officers, their expressions unreadable. The silence was immediate and absolute. Veterans in the gallery stood instinctively, backs straight, hands at their sides in a rigid posture that had been drilled into them long ago. The Admiral walked straight down the center aisle, never breaking stride, until he reached the judge's bench. One of the officers accompanying him handed the judge a red folder marked with the unmistakable stamp, Top Secret, Naval Intelligence. The judge broke the seal, unfolding the documents with care. Her face shifted as she read, first confusion, then understanding, and finally something colder, deeper, fury. She looked up slowly, her gaze settling on Cole like a spotlight snapping on in a dark theater. Officer Cole, she said, her voice flat but carrying weight. It appears you've made a very serious, irreparable mistake. A hush swept through the courtroom like a gust of wind. Cole's expression cracked. Your Honor, I don't understand. The judge didn't look at him. She turned instead to Marcus and Vanessa, her eyes no longer seeing defendants, but something else entirely. Commanders, she said formally, for the official record, you may proceed. The word hit the room like a dropped hammer. Commanders? Someone whispered. Cole blinked, trying to make sense of it. What did she say? Admiral James Price stepped forward, his voice deep, calm, and absolute. These 2 individuals are not civilians. They are active duty commanders in the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, commonly known as SEAL Team 6. They were on approved operational leave when Officer Cole unlawfully detained them. Audible gasps rippled through the gallery. The Admiral continued without pause. Last night, while in custody, Commander Reed activated Crimson Echo Protocol, a classified emergency signal used when an active duty operative is compromised in non-hostile territory. From that moment forward, this courthouse, including all holding areas and interrogation rooms, has been under surveillance by naval intelligence. The second officer stepped forward and placed a small black device on the prosecution's table. The Admiral nodded. This device contains recorded communications between Officer Cole and members of the Elkwood Sheriff's Department, including conversations in which he discusses leveraging Commander Reed's military history to justify force and manipulating the narrative to pressure one into testifying against the other. He turned to the judge. We request immediate review of this evidence under military oversight and release of the commanders under federal protection. The judge's jaw tightened. She reached for her gavel, hand trembling, not with hesitation, but with restrained rage. The courtroom was no longer Cole's stage. It belonged to the truth now, and the reckoning had only begun. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as the small black device on the prosecutor's table emitted a soft click. Then Officer Cole's voice filled the room, scratchy but unmistakable, recorded with brutal clarity. The woman's got a PTSD flag in her file, his voice said, laced with arrogance. We use that. Push 'em hard enough, they'll break. She'll fold first. We just need one of them to flip, and we close this clean. The audio continued, laying bare the strategy he'd crafted. Not out of fear or necessity, but convenience. He had turned their military service into a weapon, twisted their discipline into evidence, and now that same discipline stood unshaken, while his words crumbled everything he'd built. The Admiral watched without expression. The judge, however, no longer held back. She looked directly at Cole, her voice stripped of ceremony. Officer Cole, not only did you fabricate a narrative against two innocent individuals, you knowingly weaponized their service records, perjured yourself under oath, and compromised an active federal operation. You violated the core principles of both justice and national security. The courtroom was no longer his stage, it was his sentencing chamber. She turned to Marcus and Vanessa, her voice softening. The record will reflect your exoneration, effective immediately. All charges are dismissed. Then, addressing the bailiffs, Officer Cole is to be taken into custody. Effective now. Charges include obstruction of justice, perjury, and conspiracy against federal officers. The murmurs in the gallery turned into gasps. Cole didn't move. He looked like he couldn't. One bailiff stepped forward, then another, and suddenly the uniform he wore didn't protect him anymore. The cuffs clicked closed around his wrists with finality. As he was led out, eyes wide and stunned, Admiral Price turned to Marcus and Vanessa. Good work, commanders. Let's take you home. At the back of the room, another door opened, and Emma stepped in, escorted by Lieutenant Harris. Her eyes were wide as she spotted her parents, and in the next second she broke into a run. Marcus bent down as she flew into his arms, and Vanessa wrapped them both in hers. The courtroom fell completely silent again, but this time not out of fear or tension, just reverence. The family stood whole again in the very room that tried to break them. The truth had spoken, and it had spoken loudly. Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the steps as Marcus, Vanessa, and Emma paused beneath the flagpole. The stars and stripes fluttered above them, catching the wind with a steady rhythm that seemed to match the quiet strength in their posture. For a moment, none of them spoke. The chaos of the courtroom, the shock, the tension, it all fell away beneath the open sky. Marcus looked down at his daughter, her small hand still gripping his. I'm sorry you had to see all that, he said gently. Emma leaned into his side, her voice soft. I wasn't scared. I knew you'd fix it. Vanessa smiled faintly, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder. You were brave. You stayed strong, just like we taught you. Emma looked up at her mother. But why did they do that to you? You didn't do anything wrong. Vanessa crouched down so they were eye to eye. Sometimes people judge by what they think they see, not what they know. She touched Emma's heart lightly. But truth always finds its way through. Marcus looked back at the courthouse doors, then up at the flag. The battlefield changes, he said quietly. It's not always sand and steel. Sometimes it's a courtroom, a report, a lie that spreads like wildfire. He paused, then looked at his daughter again. But doing what's right never changes. That's what honor is. Emma nodded, thoughtful. Vanessa stood, her hand finding Marcus's. Let's go home. The three of them walked down the steps together, not in triumph, not in victory, but in quiet resilience. They hadn't shouted. They hadn't fought. They had stood their ground and let the truth speak for them. In a world too often driven by noise, they had reminded everyone watching that real strength doesn't need to raise its voice. It just needs to stand firm. And in that moment, beneath the flag, a family walked forward. Not broken, not bitter, but unshaken. The system had tried to break them, but it had only made them stronger. Long after the courthouse faded in the rearview mirror, the weight of the day still lingered. But it wasn't the weight of anger. It was the gravity of truth, the kind that shapes how a person walks through the world. Later that evening, as the family sat around their dinner table, Emma asked, "Will they do that to someone else?" Marcus looked at her, then at Vanessa. "Maybe," he admitted. "But maybe someone who saw what happened today will speak up next time. Maybe someone will think twice before staying silent." Vanessa added, "The world doesn't change all at once. It changes one moment at a time, one choice at a time." And that was the point. You don't have to wear a uniform or carry a badge to defend what's right. Sometimes courage is quiet. Sometimes it's choosing patience over rage, law over revenge, and dignity over despair. Marcus and Vanessa didn't win by force. They won by standing firm, trusting that justice, though slow, still works when people of integrity refuse to bend. We may not always get to choose the battles we face, but we can choose how we face them. So next time you witness unfairness, whether on the street, in the workplace, or behind closed doors, remember, silence helps the oppressor, but presence empowers the truth. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another powerful reminder of what it means to stand for justice. Because somewhere out there, someone is watching, waiting to believe that the system can still work, and that honor still matters.